Why have we been spending the better part of 3 decades touring North America to promote the benefits of attic ventilation? We thought Robbie Wilkerson, a past podcast guest of ours, if you didn't know we had a podcast, we have a podcast, airing it out with AirVent every month, new episode. We thought Robbie summarized it pretty nicely. We're not just trying to put on a new roof. We're trying to give a homeowner a product that could affect in a positive way their utility bills, the comfort level inside the house, and last the duration of the roof's expectant life. That's why. ARMA, which represents every brand of shingles on the street, Asphalt Roofing Manufacturers Association, says attic ventilation is a critical aspect of roof design. So the shingle maker believes that. We do a lot of surveys, folks. We deliberately engage with the industry. And one of our recent surveys, we asked roofers who make a living being on roofs, by your estimation, roofer, what percentage of shingle life goes down the drain prematurely because of bad venting? They said 24%. 24% of the shingle life is lost. We're not just worried about the shingle life. What's the attic ventilation doing to the insulation's ability to be an insulator? What's the attic air doing to the air I breathe while I'm living in the house? If we get asked why we vent attics, and we often do, we summarize it with 3 key reasons. Fight heat, fight moisture, fight ice dams. That's why we vent attics. Unfortunately, we don't stand a chance to do any of that venting, not well, if we don't do this. And although this is a 2-hour seminar, honestly, the next 60 seconds is the essence of the entire program. We've not given anybody attic ventilation if we don't do this. 2-piece puzzle, 50% intake, 50% exhaust. That is balanced attic ventilation. It's not just the vent maker who says balance the airflow. There are other interested parties who say balance the airflow. Like who, Paul? ARMA, which represents shingle makers. In black and white, their technical bulletin, balance the airflow. So the shingle maker says it, the vent maker says it. Who else? The NRCA, which represents residential roofing contractors. They say, balance the airflow. We're going to fast forward, please. We're going to fast forward, and we're going to say the member of the industry out there is on board and generally agrees attic ventilation seems to make sense. I'm talking about the architect writing the specs. I'm talking about a builder building a new tract of homes in Pennsylvania come spring. I'm talking about the re-roofer I'm hiring to replace my roof. They're all on board. And it's game day. I call roofing day game day. It's game day. I got to pick the vents for the project. What vents am I going to pick? Not the brand. Forget brand. What type? We hope this section further guides the industry picking the right type for tomorrow's roof. Here we go. Picking the right vent. We hope whoever is responsible for picking the vents asks these 5 critical questions. What's the shape of the roof? Literally, what is its geometry? What's the size of the attic I'm trying to plow air through? Small? Massive? What's the airflow capability of the vents that caught my attention? Do they move a lot of air? Do they move a little bit of air? How many of those vents will it take to do the job? What will it look like when I'm long gone and the homeowner has to pull up to the driveway for however long they keep living there? Types of exhaust on the street. Ladies and gentlemen, although there are dozens of brands out there, dozens, there's only 5 types of exhaust on the street. This collage captures all 5. There's 5 types of exhaust. You got power fans, wind turbines, Gable louvers, box vents, ridge vents. There's a time to use any one of these 5. There's a time to never use some of these. We hope this helps you make that correct choice. Box vents, can vents, turtleback vents, pot vents, dormer vents, off-ridge vents. Man, they're called all kinds of things as we travel the country. Let's call them roof louvers for the next 45 seconds. They should be installed near the peak of the roof, a couple feet down from the peak, evenly spaced apart. How many? Somebody's got to run the numbers. We're going to do it together shortly. In one single row. Limitation alert, bullet point 2. Limitation alert. Folks, time out. I work for a manufacturer. We make all 5 of these buckets. We make them all. I'm going to candidly share with you limitations because we ought to be aware of the limitations because that vent might not belong on tomorrow's roof. Limitation alert. The airflow pattern is not uniform when we use box vents. It can't be uniform. They're sporadically placed on the roof. Box vent, gap. Box vent, there's a space. Third box vent, where there's gaps, the air's not moving very well. Bullet point 3, cosmetic comment. A lot of homeowners comment to roofers, man, look at this. Did I really need 10 box vents up there? Maybe you did. Maybe the fact that the math said you need 10 should have guided me to another option. Maybe. There are models with a filter inside for additional weather protection. The bottom of the screen, there's your typical range of net free area you can expect. Gable louvers are the bottom of the barrel. They're coming up shortly. But the first category is box vents. Now we've got wind turbines. Turbines are just like a box vent, but they're tall. And they spin. A spinning box vent. Some people think they look like a chef hat. And they're kind of tall. They should be installed near the peak of the roof, evenly spaced apart, a couple feet down from the peak. How many? Somebody's got to run the numbers. We're going to do it together shortly. A lot of people complain because of their height. They're the least attractive of the 5 types because of their height. Some folks don't realize it doesn't have to spin to give you net free area. A 12-inch turbine, whether it spins or not, will deliver 95 square inches of NFA. A 14-inch turbine delivers 132. The wind is a bonus. But because we don't know what the wind is any given moment, we can't bank on it. I like to bank on a known. The known is 95 for a 12-inch, 132 for a 14-inch. Here's that bottom of the barrel I talked about. Gable louvers, category 3. Folks, we make them, and I'm being just candid with you. Rule out the other 4 categories of exhaust before you pick Gable louvers, and here's why. You're really limiting the flow of air to the extreme gable ends of the attic. They just don't draw well from other places of the attic. But there are homes out there, we don't have any other choice. Then you've got fans. Roof mount power fans, gable mount power fans. Roof mount have a dome. The dome comes in a color. Hopefully the color matches the color of the shingles. Gable mount have a shutter. The shutter automatically opens when the fan is running. The shutter closes when the fan is off. The nice thing about a power fan, because it has at least a thermostat control, it'll turn on whenever we need it to. As the heat rises and reaches the thermostat setting, that kicks on the motor and it begins to ventilate for us. If it also has bullet point number 2, a humidistat, it'll tackle the 2 to 4 gallons of water vapor we're generating as occupants of the house. Ladies and gentlemen, without bullet point number 2, The fan will only fight heat. Bottom of the screen, there's your typical range of CFM you can expect out of a power fan. And then you've got solar powered fans. So the first two I showed you are traditional hardwired fans. These are solar powered for markets that enjoy plentiful sun. You'll have to determine if that's you or not. There's gable mount. There's roof mount. We make a roof mount model where the panel is physically attached to the dome. We make a model where the panel is separate from the dome. We give you a 10-foot cord, put the panel where you want on the roof, within 10 feet, with ideal exposure to the sun. We recommend a southwestern orientation. HE15, the green box behind me and on the screen right now. Traditional, hardwired fan with a couple cool features. A variable speed motor and an onboard computer chip. No other motor we make is variable speed. All of our other motors are permanent split capacitor. They either are on or they are off. There's no in between. This unit, thus its name, high efficiency, literally will monitor what's going on right now in Paul's attic. Does Paul's attic require full throttle operation? It does not. And since it does not require it, let's tap the brakes, let's back off a bit, and let's give Paul's attic partial output. And then we have the final category for exhaust, ridge vents. We saved it for last because it's the best of the 5 types. You've got 4-foot stick ridge vents. You've got continuous rolled ridge vents. Here's why we put this at the top of the mountain without hesitation. And we put the important word in blue ink and we underlined it for you. Ridge vents are the only group out of the 5 that'll deliver uniform, gap-free, no break in the action, air movement from low on the deck to high on the deck along the entire horizontal peak of the deck. Of course it is. It's the only one out there that's installed all along the peak of the roof. You give a good intake, no gaps. You know what the other 4 groups will give us? That ridge vent will never burden us with. Blue triangles in the attic. The blue triangles is the intake air coming in the intake vents, doing its job in the attic, and then eventually exiting. The problem is air can't exit where there's no outlet. Air can't move where there's no hole. Look at all those red hot pockets. Look at all those unvented cavities in the attic. Call it box vents. Call it wind turbines. Call it a pair of Gable louvers. Call it a power fan. Blue triangles in the attic. You want to lose the blue triangles? Give that same shape roof ridge vent. Time out. I'm going to beat you to the punch because I've been doing this for a while and you might be thinking this. We're not saying every roof out there in Lancaster is a slam dunk, obvious ridge vent candidate. We know that's not the case. There'd only be ridge vents on the market if every roof could receive ridge vent. But here's what we are saying without hesitation. I'm Paul's Roofing and my competition is Clint. And we're both happen to be working on side-by-side roofs. I give the homeowner box vents. Clinton gives them ridge vent. Clinton gave the homeowner a better performing exhaust system. That's our message. I can't tell you how many roofers have reported back to AirVent after the homeowner learns for the first time, wait a minute, buddy, you mean to tell me that vent is this low profile out of the box? Yes, miss. and your team, if I'm following you right, your team's going to be putting matching cap shingles on top so it kind of blends in with the rest of the roof. Is that what you're telling me? Yes, sir. Yeah, I kind of like that. Sign me up. That's not how the conversation goes, but that is the gist of the message. A lot of homeowners don't know about ridge vent. Let's tell them. Our most popular YouTube video on our YouTube channel is 1995's smoke bomb, smoke candle is a friendlier word, video where we dropped 2 different color smoke candles in side-by-side attics. Attic A has an externally baffled ridge vent. Attic B does not. They both got good intake with the camera rolling and the clock ticking in 90 rapid seconds. You can see for yourself on camera, on the screen, how well or not so well the smoke exits the attic. The smoke represents heat buildup and moisture buildup. We modernized that video with our smokehouse in 2018, and we filmed it also in work, operating. It's also on our YouTube channel. This graph drives home one more time why you want an externally baffled ridge vent. Up top, horizontally, is the wind speed. It's not a strong wind. In yellow, orange, that's the externally baffled ridge vent, shingle vent 2. In red, GAF's mesh, rolled, non-baffled Cobra vent. In defense of GAF, they make a 4-foot stick, externally baffled ridge vent, and it would do rather well in this test. But the point of this test, to create the Bernoulli effect, that's what it's called when the wind hits that baffle. It's called the Bernoulli effect, the Bernoulli principle. It's what gives lift to an airplane. To create the Bernoulli effect, you need what orange has going for it, an externally baffled ridge vent. Even a slight breeze makes a difference. I'm going to wrap up exhaust with our decision tree. We added this last year. It's been pretty well received. If you reach out to AirVent for guidance, it usually happens in the spring and summer. Hey, AirVent, here's an aerial view of next week's project. Could we hear your thoughts on how you would vent this? Here's what we would say if you asked us. Probably no surprise to you. We're going to begin, yes or no, is it a ridge vent candidate? That's our opening question. It is a ridge vent candidate. Goodbye. It's going to be a short conversation. We're not going to climb the tree any further if it is a ridge vent candidate. It's not a ridge vent candidate. Keep climbing with me, AirVent. Okay, then the next branch we're going to recommend is a power fan. They move a lot of air quickly. 1 or 2 units typically will do the job. Downside, the motor's going to last about a decade, and then you got to replace it. If you can't use ridge vent and you can't use power fans, the next branch on the tree, turbines or box vents. We put them on the same branch because they're about the same. It comes down to cosmetics. One's a little bit taller than the other. And how many do you need? 1 turbine is roughly 2 box vents. If you can't use any of these 4, there's only 1 more category left. Anybody remember what the 5th category is? Gable. That was nice. Thank you. Gable louvers. Let's talk now about the second piece of the 2-piece puzzle, intake. What we think is often the overlooked piece. This collage shows you the types of intake out there. Let's roll through them one by one. Rectangular under eaves. The bigger the rectangle, the more net-free area. I'm holding an 8 by 16. It's 56 NFA. Then there's 6 by 16 and 4 by 16. Vented soffit panel. I call this a siding product with holes to allow air to flow. It's an okay way to go. We do recommend, however, fully vented soffit. Not center vent, not every 2 panels, fully vented to maximize the overhang. Yesterday the question came up, if I can meet my net free area requirements with center vent, would that be okay? Sure. It's been our experience though, you're going to be challenged to meet your net free area, not impossible, but challenged with center vent, which is why we recommend fully vented. Continuous soffit strip, 8 or 10 feet long, might be plastic, PVC, could be aluminum. Continuous soffit strip. Then you got vented drip edge. Vented drip edge combines a drip edge with a soffit strip in its belly for homes with little or no overhang. You can use this with or without a gutter. Full disclosure, it's a lot easier without a gutter. Vented drip edge. And then there's 4-foot stick, plastic, shingle over, rooftop installed, edge vent, giving the roofer control over the intake as well as the exhaust, if he or she wants control. This literally installs at the edge of the roof, and you shingle over it. It's a 2-piece design, folks. And it's got Shingle Vent 2's internal weather filter. If I were to separate the top half from the bottom half, yank out the internal weather filter, parked right in front of the drainage channel is a wind-driven rain stop. Any weather being carried by the wind, we hope hits A and stops right there. If it doesn't stop there, and it doesn't always stop there, the curvature of B and C acts as a diverter, a deflector, to get that weather out of the vent. This triangular logo is meant to reinforce not only is it important to have intake and exhaust, it's much easier to get to intake and exhaust if you happen to use these 2 4-foot stick products. Here's the edge vent. I'm holding a cut piece, but it's a 4-foot stick. It's 9 NFA per foot. 9. Shingle Vent 2, ridge vent. It's a 4-foot stick. It's 18 NFA per foot. 18. A pair of 9s equals 18. 2 sticks of this equals 1 stick of that. AirVent recommends, please, before you drop down from 1/150 to 1/300, before you do less airflow, would you think about it? We're building today much more airtight than we ever used to. We're remodeling tomorrow much more airtight. We believe these tighter built homes have attics that are better served at 1/150. You're not required to do this. It's our guidance. In support of that guidance, here's some third-party research. This slide is pretty popular with the audiences. You might want to take a picture of it when it's done building. I've just noticed that phones pop up on certain slides. This is one of them. At 1/150 instead of 1/300, the burden on the air conditioner is lightened 10%. I told you I'm a Philadelphia born and raised kid, but I've been in Texas since '96. I'm telling you, as a Texas homeowner, bullet point 1 captures my attention. Now, bullet point 2, I suspect, is going to feel counterintuitive to you. Would you please be patient with the research? The need to heat the living space in the middle of a Pennsylvania winter is lightened with more air passing through the attic. the opportunity for condensation to show is slashed by a third with more air moving through the attic. My favorite part of the program, buckle up, install tips. So this is my favorite part because much of the content has come from the industry. Install tips. I'm going to begin with something that's not particularly exciting on the surface, but it's pretty important to us. The install sheet that the vent maker wrote. Since 2012, and every 3 years since, building code says follow the vent maker's install guidance. I'm not a fan of reading the entire install sheet. When I buy a consumer product, I'm not a fan of reading the whole thing, but I'm also not particularly handy, and I know that about myself. So I'm going to get a grasp of what I'm in for. You got to have a grasp of what we're in for. What is the grasp of the ventilation? We extracted it right here. Every install sheet we write, this is the grasp. You give somebody exhaust, you got to give them intake. Exhaust without intake is not only useless, it's problematic. And if Paul's Roofing in Pennsylvania claims we don't do intake, it's just not part of our business model, but we'll sell you weatherwood shingles all day long and the exhaust of your choice. We don't touch intake. That's fine. That's Paul's business. But I'm not off the hook on final payment day of telling the homeowner, we're done and we're leaving. Your roof is not done. You need intake. We don't do intake. Frankly, the people who come to our seminar, by and large, they say they're going to do the intake. They want to own the whole project. I get fired up about this section. I apologize because it drives the callbacks that Clinton, Steve, and I monitor on our hotline, 1-800-AirVent. The number one mistake is on the screen right now in residential North America in ventilation. Intake. 95% of the callbacks are intake related. This is the second most common mistake in residential attic ventilation, folks. So the number one mistake was intake. It's a neck and neck race, but this is coming in at number 2. Mixing types of exhaust on the same roof above a common attic. We call this short-circuiting of the ventilation system. Folks, there's 5 types of exhaust. We already reviewed them. We're not going to do it again, but we're going to say very clearly, there is never an occasion above a common attic we want any 2 of these 5 on the same roof. Because the second type of exhaust could be called into intake duty, and they're not designed to do that. Air follows the path of least resistance. Here's how the air is supposed to move. It comes in point A and exits point B. Notice there's no point C. No point C. But if I introduce a point C, look at the difference of the path of the air. When it's right, the entire attic is being vented. When it's wrong, you're short-circuiting the system. Look at this giant chunk of attic not being vented. Furthermore, those are blue arrows we're showing you. We really don't know what Mother Nature's carrying. Blue arrows could be rain, snow, debris. What if they want me to add a power fan? Because they don't think the ridge vent is cutting it in the summer. I'll pay you to add a power fan, Paul. And I add a power fan to give the ridge vent a boost. I've not given them a boost. I've given them a problem. Right now, the power fan is off. It's not running. You think we're in the clear. We're far from in the clear. The box vents really are what these are right now. They're power fans not running. They're openings on the roof. The ridge vent pulls from the box vent, the power fan not running. One day that motor is going to turn on. Look what happens when the motor turns on. the running power fan draws from the ridge vent. Folks, we promise you, if ridge vent is suddenly an intake vent, that is a callback itching to happen. I skipped over this and I want to go back to it. It's not just the vent maker who says, don't mix. Some people don't realize the shingle maker says, don't mix. And building code says, follow the vent maker's guidance. If they got a gable louver, I'm going to block off the gable louver and rely on the ridge vent or the fan, whatever primary exhaust I installed. If I can't get in the attic, don't want to get in the attic, from the exterior I might put plexiglass over the gable louver. I'm not leaving the gable louver functional. It's a cosmetic tip, but it's a big tip. Please don't stop the ridge vent short of the full run of the ridge. Yes, the slot stops at point A, and there's a couple more feet of dead space, but put the vent on that dead space so Mrs. Johnson isn't staring at a gap, a broken line. Let's give Mrs. Johnson a clean, curbside look. That's our tip. Run at the distance.